Hi, and welcome to this week's video blog on Some Assembly Required. I'm Sarah Hammerger, and I'm glad you joined me. Today I want to talk about should you play with your kids. This may seem a funny topic for a video, but I get asked this quite a lot, mostly because we're all a little unsure about how we're supposed to handle it. So the question comes from a mom who has 4 kids, 2 months old, 6 months old, 2, 4, and 6 years old. So she has a lot just to keep busy during the day with the feeding and the naps and the taking care of the house, that her children constantly ask for mom to play with them or to spend time one-on-one. And she feels all she ever says is, "Not right now, mommy is busy." And I can relate. I felt like there were days when that's all I said. But her question is very provocative because she says, how do I determine what is an appropriate amount of time to spend with them? She's like, my household seems so busy to really get one-on-one time with them each day. What does it look like to make sure they're getting enough love and attention? Yeah, that's a great question because we all want to know that, right? How much love and attention can we give them? We have our own work. Sometimes we work outside the home. Sometimes we have work inside the home. I mean, I work from home, so there's work that I have to do. But how do we be available to our kids? How do we make sure we keep that in connection? Whether it's play or conversation, how do we do it? Well, I'm going to give you some, I'm going to provide a framework for thinking about how much attention children really need and how to devise a schedule that allows for all the necessary work related to the care and feeding, especially of young children, but even older kids, time for mom and dad, and one that solidifies that parent-child connection. So first I told this mom, yeah, I mean, I get it. You're busy, and even moms of older kids, you're busy, you're taking kids here and there. Sometimes you feel like you never really connect, and there's all this pull and pull and pull on your attention. You know, there was often days when my kids were, this mom, my 4 children were around her kids' ages when my husband came in from work, and he's like, what did you do? And I'm like, the children are still alive. That's all I did. I kept them alive. Uh, um, but I also felt guilty some days because I wanted to play with them more, but you know, the 4-year-old spilled the cereal over the floor. Well, I can't walk on that all day. I have to clean it up. So how do you balance that? And how do you help your child not whine and beg for attention that you can't give? How do you keep all those balls in the air? Well, I want you to remember a few things. One, quantity isn't the same as quality time. I know what you're thinking. You can't possibly carve out 30 minutes of your day to spend one-on-one with each of your 3 older kids, because I know this mom is spending tons of time with her baby. Or, you know, maybe you can't, you know, you work all day and you come home and you only have a couple hours at night before all your kids are in bed. How do you manage it? You can find 5 minutes, right? You can figure out 5 minutes a day per, you know, a grand total of 15 minutes. I think we can all find 15 minutes or 5 minutes for each kid a day. How do we do that? By letting go some of your expectations of what needs to be done versus what has to be done. Now, this is going to change as your children get older, but it has to be done. I mean, you have to have food. They have to have a place to sleep. Any pets need to be taken care of. That's the has to be done. The needs to be done is everything else. I mean, seriously, I went months, okay, make that years, without dusting a single surface in my house when my kids were too little. I often handed my 2 oldest girls a bucket and a rag and I said, play Cinderella on the kitchen floor just to get the floor a little bit clean. And believe me, they loved it. My husband cleaned the bathrooms for years until our kids were old enough to do that chore. There were trade-offs, though. I mean, there were things that we didn't do, I didn't buy, and I didn't care about. And I made myself be able to adjust my expectations so that when the kids were little and they couldn't do a lot of things, made them not realize, but made me realize what my priorities were a little bit different. And I think that's great. Now I encourage this mom to have her kids do chores, and next week I'm going to talk about how to implement chores in your household, because this is a question I get a lot of too. Now for shoehorning one-on-one time, A great way to do this, especially when the kids are little, is label a jar Time with Mom, put popsicle sticks in it or pieces of paper with their name on it, and then you make time in the morning and the afternoon, say 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, where you draw a name and you go, okay, Susie, it's time with Mom. Let's read a book, or let's have tickle time, or let's blah, blah. I'm setting the timer for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I'm all yours. And then you have fun. But so when kids know will know that they will get Mom's attention once a day, twice a day, if you can manage it, they will cut down on the whining. I used to tell my kids, I used the kitchen timer a lot when they were young. I used to tell my kids, okay, in 5 minutes, I'm going to set the timer. In 5 minutes, we're going to do something. So I set the timer. I could finish what I was doing, because sometimes it was important, like feeding the baby or changing a diaper or etc. And then that would mean that they would know that when it rang, I was like, oh, okay, time. When we're proactive in helping our children, when connecting with our children, when we're the ones initiating that, it means so much to them. I mean, you just don't understand how much it means to them. Their little faces light up. I often encourage parents that it's not how much time we spend with them. It's those little touch points. For example, when I find an article on dinosaurs in the newspaper and I fold it over and I put it at the place of one of my sons who loves dinosaurs, his little face lights up because Mom thought of him when he wasn't in the room, and she found this article for him. Maybe he found it out, maybe he was at school and I just put it out there for him to get home. And that shows him that I noticed that he likes, and I made an effort to share that with him a little bit. From one of my sons who loves birds, there's a picture of bird, an article on bird. I do the same thing. For my daughters, they love K-pop. Whenever I see an article on K-pop, I make sure that they've seen it. I pointed out articles about South Korea because they're interested in everything South Korean. And we talk about that. We talk about new restaurants, new Korean restaurants that have opened. And I say, hey, did you know this? Maybe we'll be able to go to that. That shows them that I notice what they like. And that takes just a couple of minutes. It just takes me being more aware of what they like. And as I'm going through my day, when I come across something, I'm like, oh, such and such would love that. So I get it, or I find it, or I make a note, or I do something like that and I share it with them. That's important. The other thing that I've done that has been good to keep that connection with my kids is that when they come home from school, I go up and talk to them. Now, most of the time they don't really want to talk to me, but I make that quick touch point. Is there anything I need me to sign? How was your day? Is there anything you need to know? And I can kind of tell how their day was, and sometimes we just may have a quick touch and then they're off. But I make sure that I'm not on my phone, I'm not checking email. My attention is on them. And that's important. It helps them to know. So you can increase the time you spend with your kids as your schedule allows. Make sure you have those touch points with them. Get those little connections. I always encourage parents, to be, you don't have to be passionate about what your kids are passionate about, but you do have to be interested enough to have conversations about it, interested enough to make those connections with your kids. I hope you join me next week when I'm going to talk about chores and how to implement them with your kids. Thanks for joining me on Some Assembly Required. We're